Hello, welcome to our channel Brexit Nomads, where myself, Rob and Graham will be chatting about how we reinvented ourselves after what should have been the biggest monumental event of our generation, Brexit, because we were living happily in Spain. Having sold up everything in the UK, I'd reinvented myself as a Mediterranean gardener, and Graham is a digital nomad, i.e. he manages to teach online, though he did a little bit of schoolwork in Spain as well. The history going back, so let's go back to the beginning. Working in the House of Lords in the late 1990s, we had a fringe group that would come in once a month and take over one of the dining rooms, the Clement Attlee dining room, which has Princess Margaret's son Viscount Linley furniture in it, which was one of the dining rooms that I managed during my 21 years in Parliament. Once a year, Lord Harris of Highcross, with his sidekick Lord Pearson, would set up basically a lunch with like-minded anti-European people, MPs that were anti-Europe, members of their lordships' house that were anti-Europe, and business people and journalists, anybody piling in that were anti-Europe. Now, Lord Pearson called me the Bean Man, nothing to do with Mr. Bean. I was the Bean Man because I'd given his daughter an extra portion of beans once in the upstairs restaurant, and people of that ilk, they like to give funny names. We did a house sit for a lady who calls her gardener Grunt, because he's over 50 and he's slowed down, so he's Grunt. And Virginia Woolf actually called the butler in Orlando Basket. So this sort of follows through into giving members of staff nicknames. So I was the Bean Man. Anyhow, these lunches were once a month, like I say, and there was a lot of anticipation and great excitement as these characters came into the Attlee room. It felt like some sort of underground den, trying to overthrow the government or something. And they'd have pamphlets, with the latest of the anti-European sentiment, and then they were going to talk about it over a 3-course lunch. Nigel Farage came in on a couple of them, and he wasn't known at the time, but I'd heard of him, and I said, hello, Mr. Farage. He was very impressed that this head waiter would know his name at that time. And one month they managed to get the golden chalice. Margaret Thatcher actually came in on the lunch, and they were all very excited to have the sainted Margaret in attendance. Now, of course, she was pro-Euro, pro-European, as all of her generation was at the beginning, because we never wanted to see the horrors of another European war, never mind a world war. And although Brussels was incredibly corrupt, at least we had a place at the table. And it was Margaret herself who banged on the table, wanting, I want my money back, and they gave her a refund. So it could have worked from the inside. Anyway, she sat quietly throughout the whole lunch as they were all going at it. The debates getting more heated as the courses came on, and she had whiskey at the end, and she suddenly lost the plot. She banged on the table, having heard all this diatribe throughout the whole lunch, and said, well, to hell with Europe, and to hell with all the Europeans. It deeply shocked a Spanish waiter who was part of my team that lunchtime. He went white, and I said, what's the matter? And he said, well, I'm from Spain, but I've lived in London for many years. I voted for Margaret Thatcher. I didn't realise that she could be like this. So it's quite a shock for him. So these were the beginnings of something which was never expected to really happen. It's a bit like the green issues people being long-haired hippies with sandals. Nobody ever expected something so crazy as Brexit to come about. And as we know now, because it's a historical event, the only reason it happened is because the English, the United Kingdom people are not given referendums, unlike our Scandinavian counterparts who are asked to vote on anything by bike lanes to green litter picking or whatever it happens to be. We're not given referendums, so this was a throwaway piece of nonsense by the coalition Prime Minister Cameron, and nobody in the Westminster Village, absolutely nobody, expected it to be an out vote. But the British people were actually really disillusioned with the parliamentarians. We had the sleaze, whatever you want to call it, expenses scandal, duck houses, all the rest of it. They'd taken the piss, and there was no comeback from the people of, say Merseyside or Middlesbrough, places like that. They felt completely and utterly betrayed. And so, of course, even if it wasn't Brexit, it could have been any referendum that had been put on the table would have had a dramatic result, because the people of the UK were incredibly upset with their legislators. So that's a bit of the history that, but it was years later, having settled in Spain, but not taking residencia, because we were all part of Europe. You could come and go as you please, you could stay there for as long as you want. You just have to basically get an NIE number, which is a national insurance number, but that's just a case of filling out a form in an office and going across the road and paying the money into the local police station, because they don't trust civil servants to handle money. And that's all you have to do, actually, and you can just stay there as a European citizen. And I remember listening to the radio. It sort of built, it went on for about 4 years, wasn't it? Brexit, Brexit, Brexit. It's like a bloody plague. And on that morning, I remember, I stayed up the night before in Middlesbrough. The people of Middlesbrough jumped up and down because they had the first swing to an out, coming out. I went to sleep. I thought, I don't want to hear any more of this, and hope that was just a blip and the rest of the country wouldn't be so stupid. But in the morning, John Humphreys on Radio 4 said, we're out. Thanks a lot. Because it actually meant that we then had a time frame to get out. It was a bit like I have seen in my own lifetime people leaving South Africa, people leaving other places. It's didn't expect that to happen. So this is the basis of where we come from and what we've done since. And actually we haven't stopped. We've been volunteering. We're going to cover Buddhism. We're going to cover all the different workaways, trusted house sitters. I'm now in a lovely house in Norfolk on the Trusted House Sitters site. And hopefully it's going to be not as boring as this post. It's going to be very entertaining and witty. And actually when people talk to myself and Graham, they quite often, they can't believe that we just now live with one suitcase each and manage to bounce along and meet lots of really interesting people, and lots of opportunities have opened up. So out of this ludicrous situation, one of our relations voted Brexit because she saw on breakfast TV on that very day the farmers were complaining about the price of milk. There you go.